Hi friends, welcome back. Today we are making Angel's Share, released by Kilian in 2020. Or, again, to clarify, we're making a formula based on a GCMS analysis of Angel's Share by Kilian. This was again released in 2020. The perfumer is Benoit Lapausa, and according to Fragrantica, this is a woody amber fragrance. A lot of people love this fragrance. I have a few different formulas for this. This one I found on Reddit, a great subreddit called Perfumery Formulas. And it's pretty close. Actually, it's very close to a Laboratorium, a Wisemore formula that I have. There are some differences as far as the weightings, but it's different enough where I feel comfortable posting this. Again, what I'll do is when I go through the formula here, I'll make note of what I'm putting in, but I won't give the exact amounts as far as the main formula, so that if there's a copyright claim on the formula that I post, then I can just delete it from the show notes. If we look at the pyramid here, most of this is in sweet notes, and I'm going to include musk in those sweet notes. We've got a lot of vanilla, Coumarin, Ethyl Maltol, Ethyl Vanillin, and then our musks are the ambery, warm, sweet type musks. There's plenty of Hedione to give it that lift and that push. There's plenty of Isobutyric Super, and then there are a lot of colors, you could say. Of course, you can't just make a great fragrance just from musk and vanillin and whatnot. You got to add some color. And in here, there's a lot of fruity notes, pineapple, apple, fruity notes. There's plenty of linalool, ethyl linalool, and Linalyl Acetate for that nice floral metallic push. In general, this is a wonderful formula. I've already made this. I shot this video once before. The audio was terrible, so I'm reshooting it a few weeks later. But let's get down to business here. What we're going to start with, because this is so heavily based on the sweet notes, this is the foundation, that's where we're going to start. Now, in my little beaker, I already have a little bit of Solguard and a little bit of ethanol. The batch that I'm making today is about 45 grams. It'll be roughly 18% concentrate. So we're, getting into the eau de parfum territory. And what we're going to start with is our dry materials. We are first going to start with Ethyl Maltol. Ethyl Maltol here, which smells of burnt sugar, caramel, cotton candy, candy floss, as it were. This is almost 14% of the concentrate. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. All right. Next up, we have Coumarin. Also using Coumarin neat. Coumarin is about 4.5%, almost 4.5% of the concentrate. But I love Coumarin because it's sweet. It has a brightness to it that vanilla does not have, that vanillin does not have. It almost has this aquatic nature. It's the best. Watery isn't quite right to me. That indicates if I were to say watery, like a certain transparency or clarity. Coumarin though, it almost adds a juiciness. Whenever I add it, I feel like it's adding this juiciness to the fragrance. All right, we'll swirl that around. Hopefully, this will dissolve by the time I get in all the other sweet notes. So next up, let's add in Ethyl Vanillin. ethyl vanillin I'm adding is at a 10% dilution. This smells a lot like your plain old vanillin, just a bit more like vanilla ice cream. It's very pleasant, very easy. Easy on the nose. Okay. Let's add our vanillin. Just over 2% of the concentrate is in normal vanillin. This stuff is wonderful. It's your just standard vanilla smell. Though if you associate vanilla ice cream with vanillin, or with vanillin, then it's kind of the wrong vanillin. Vanillin, plain old vanillin, just a little bit, maybe you could say darker, a little bit richer. Okay, next up, Isobutavan. Now, I like Isobutavan. Yeah, it's vanilla, but it's a little bit more caramely, a little bit more caramelic. Fair bit of Isobutavan, just over 1% of the concentrate. Wonderful. And last up here, Tonka Bean Absolute. Yeah, this stuff is wonderful. Smells a lot like coumarin because, well, it has a lot of coumarin in it. Just over 1.5% of the concentrate is in Tonka Bean Absolute. Now I'm using a 5% dilution of Tonka Bean. I purchased it as a 50% dilution from Perfumer's Apprentice, and it smells wonderful. But because out of the bottle I dilute just about everything to 10%, I took that already 50% dilution and diluted it 10%. So what do you get if you take 10% times 50%? You get 5%. So that's what it is. Okay. Let's see if we can get, this to dissolve before we smell. I'll put it on the burner. Let's put it on the nuclear reactor. Remember, my heat pad, my little stir plate, my hot plate starts at very hot, and it goes from hot to nuclear. There's no in between. So let's give that just a second on the hot plate. All right, we're back. The solid materials have dissolved, and while I was waiting it to dissolve, I got our scent strips lined up. There's going to be lots of smelling today, a lot of intermediate stages in the smelling, which I'm excited about. So let's dip our vanilla strip. Next up, we're going to add our musks. Let's start with Galaxolide. Lots of Galaxolide here. Now, Galaxolide is a tried and true musk. It's not animalic, it's clean. I'm using this at a 50% concentration or a 50% dilution. Just over 10% of the concentrate is in Galaxolide. I'm going to need more than one of these big pipettes. Here we go. All right, we got our clean Galaxolide in there. Next up, Ethylene Brassylate, or Musk Tea. Again, another 10% of the concentrate is in ethylene brassylate. I like ethylene brassylate. It too is clean. It's a little metallic. It's a little ambery, right kind of in the middle of the road. It's neutral, it's strong, inoffensive. Gives a nice base to build upon. Okay. Wonderful. We have 3 more. Musk R1, or 11-oxahexadecanolide. Now, if I remember correctly, now there's not much in here of Musk R1. Musk R1 is a bit on the creamy side, almost lactonic. It's a touch powdery, more so powdery than it is metallic. Okay, a little bit more. Wonderful. There's a great chart floating around. I'll see if I can find it and throw it up on screen. But it shows, I don't know who put it together, but it's really helpful to help visualize where musks are at in the clean to animalic landscape and powdery, and powdery to metallic. Clean animalic and powdery to metallic. And it puts them on this XY axis. And it's a pretty good framework. It's a pretty good framework. And of course there's other nuances, like is it fruity? Like adenylide is somewhat fruity. It's got almost an apple quality to it. But it works pretty well. At least to help with a mental map in your head of where to place certain musks. Next up is Scentolide from Cinnamic. It's another version of Ambroxolide or Isobutavan. All of the Ambroxolides I very much enjoy. They are clean, musky, ambery. Come on. If you don't have Scentolide, just use Ambroxolide. No biggie. No biggie. Okay. Last up, Tonalide. Is it Tonalide? Yeah. Where are you at? Why can't I find Tonalide up here? Ah, Tonalide. Okay, it's up in the animalic section. Tonalide is a bit more metallic. I'm sorry, animalic. A bit more animalic. But not terribly so. I think I have this misclassified. I'm gonna reclassify this right now. It's when I'm thinking of animalic, what I'm thinking of, how close does it get, or what nuances of muscone or muscenone are in the musk. Sometimes it can get pretty sour, pretty heavy animalic, and at other times it's not animalic at all. All right, there's a lot of Tonalide. I'm using a 10% dilution. I'm going to have a couple full pipettes here. About 2.5% of the concentrate is in Tonalide. Okay. All right. Our musks are done. I'll give it a quick little blend. I love seeing the materials mixed together. Oops. Pipette is toast. Get another pipette in there. Keep blending. All right. Of course, it takes more time to fully blend to fully blend this. For example, when I put in Hedione and I just blend it up, mix it up a little bit, I'm still going to be able to smell the Hedione as separate from all these other pieces. So it does take some time. Next up, we're only going to add 2 materials, Veramoss or Evernow and Sandalwood. We're going to start with Veramoss. Veramoss, also known as methyl atrarate. This is one of the main constituent chemicals inside of oak moss. It's a lovely material. Absolutely lovely material. I think our industry was blessed when they figured out how to separate the methyl atrarate from the oak moss. Next up, sandalwood. Now this is Australian sandalwood. This, to my nose, is a lot like Indian sandalwood or Mysore sandalwood, but it's more present in my nose. I don't know if sandalwood from India contains heavier molecules, but whenever I smell it, I can feel it, as it were, in my nostrils. I know it's there. It's just hinting and whispering to me. But I can't really register it strongly in my nose. Australian sandalwood, I actually can register it in my nose. It's wonderful, beautiful, creamy, lactonic, woody, smooth. It's everything you'd hope it would be. All right, and I believe it's a little less expensive than Indian sandalwood. Okay, mix, mix, mix. All right, let's dip. We're going to save all of these scent strips to the end and do a stepwise analysis of how they smell. Now, next up, we have 4 materials. These are our balsamic notes, or more balsamic notes. We're going to start with our benzoin. Benzoin Siam. Not much, just about a drop. And this is at a 5% dilution. Benzoin Siam is different than benzoin Sumatra. You have Styrax tonkinensis is the benzoin Siam versus Styrax benzoin, which is your benzoin Sumatra. They are different. Of course, there are similarities, but don't grab one benzoin thinking it will suffice. I did learn that benzoin Siam is often adulterated. Quite often they'll put extra vanilla in benzoin Siam. Next up, let's do our myrrh. Myrrh oil from Somalia. I recently had to make a new dilution of this. It had gone bad. When you smell myrrh right out of the bottle, at least in a 10% dilution, it's light. It's a little woody. It's a little resinous, but not in a sharp way. There's almost a transparency, like a tea note to it. When I opened it up a couple days ago, it was like a blast of like really scratchy wax just hit my nose. And yeah, I had to make a new dilution. Funny enough, I don't refrigerate my myrrh, but the original bottle, it was still good. So the dilution I had made was not good. The original bottle of the myrrh was just fine. Maybe it has something to do with the opening and closing of the bottle over and over again, exposing it to oxygen. Perfect. I purchased a little bottle of Wine Saver Air. I think it's just argon in like a little canister. And occasionally I will spray that argon into a bottle, probably not a dilution, but into an actual, bottle of material, just to argon is heavy, so it sits on top of, it sinks below, oxygen, and it's inert, so it won't react with the chemicals. I'm just hoping to increase the longevity of my materials. Okay, next, Cinnamic Alcohol or Cinnamil Alcohol. This stuff I like. It's heavy. It's heavy in the nose. It's cinnamic. It's almost like cinnamon, but without the spicy aspect of it. If you were to take that nice sizzle that exists in cinnamon, that heat, and take it away, what you're left with is this wonderful, wonderful smooth base. Reminds me of that. Okay. And then last, Cistus. Now, the Cistus I have, there's not much in here. This I got from Perfumer's Apprentice. It's it's good, but it's smoky. It's very smoky, and there's an extra balsamic quality to it that's very rich that I don't have in some other Cistus. That is also, it's smoky, it's leathery, it's bright, but there's a kind of balsamic note in here that's interesting. Anyway, there's not much in here. 0.01% of the concentrate. This is a 1% dilution, and I'm going to need about 7 drops. That should take care of it. Yeah. Perfect. I keep putting the pipette away. There it is. When I should be mixing using the last pipette. All right. Let's dip the balsamic notes. Now, the next batch, or the next set of ingredients I'm excited for. I'll tell you why. Because there's a lot of it. We are doing Linalool, Ethyl Linalool, Linalool Oxide, and Linalyl Acetate. So let's start with our Linalool. Now, Linalool itself, there's actually not much of. 0.05% of the concentrate, roughly speaking. Ooh, but I can smell it from the bottle. It's floral, it's fresh, it's bright, it's metallic. There's a cleanliness to it that's wonderful. Okay. Need to do just a little bit more. Here we go. Okay. Let's do our Ethyl Linalool. Kind of a sweeter, less metallic, a little bit more floral version of Linalool. Also at a 10% dilution, 10% dilution. Perfect. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of Linalool Oxide. And I don't know if this was constituent of a natural, or if this is it's here from a chemical reaction within the formula, but there's not a lot of Linalool Oxide. In fact, yeah, 0.005% of the concentrate, not much. I'm not even going to do a full drop here. I'm going to let it collect a little bit. See if I can get to 0.4. You're pretty close. 0.004 grams of Linalool Oxide, and last but not least, there's a lot of Linalyl Acetate. Now, I probably could have substituted in something else that has plenty of Linalyl Acetate. I might have added more linalool than was needed, but we could do something like, you could probably do something like lavandin or lavender. We could do something like neroli. But we're just going to go with the pure Linalyl Acetate. Just over 2.5% of the concentrate is in Linalyl Acetate. Going to need a few pipettes, and I'm not going to forget this time. I will not throw my pipette away. I will use it to blend the juice that we have. Okay, wonderful. Blend, blend, blend. I'm interested to smell the difference between what we had done up until all the linalols and then after the linalols. The metallic nature of linalool and how it helps boost and push out a fragrance. You know, I just want to smell that. I want to smell that in action. So let's dip. Okay, next up, we are going to add both the fruity and the florals. There are materials here that are hands down fruity, like ethyl propionate, Verdox, ethyl isobutyrate. And then there's fruity floral, like Damascenone. Nerolidol, okay. Got my window open. Never know what's going to happen out there. So let's just hop into this. Let's start with our Damascenone. I'm using Damascenone Total, a slightly less fine version of Damascenone. Think of it like if you're going to the store and you want some whiskey, you can buy a $100 bottle of whiskey, or you can buy a $60 bottle of whiskey. Damascenone Total is the $60 bottle of whiskey. Still good, but it's not the $100 bottle. Just perhaps some subtle differences for those with a trained nose. All right. Next up, let's move to the Nerolidol. Okay. Nerolidol. It's floral, it's woody, it's green. How much do we have? Not much, maybe 3 drops. Oh, 3.5. Love it when we get a half drop in here. Okay. Next up, Irone Alpha. Nice violet, orris, woody. Ooh. We are getting close to expiration on this. I'm not getting that nice, pure, woody, orris, violet tone that I'm used to. It's getting a touch waxy, scratchy, a touch off. So we're getting close. I might set it to the side and make a new dilution. That's kind of a bummer. Irone Alpha is expensive. It is expensive. I believe, yeah. I've got a 4 ml vial from Perfumer's Apprentice. You know, costs about 25 bucks. So it's not cheap. We'll put it aside with the Cinnamic Alcohol, because the Cinnamic Alcohol, I think, is also in need of a fresh dilution. Next up, we're going to add our Heliotropin. Heliotropin, otherwise known as Piperonal. You get a nice powdery floral cherry. Powdery floral cherry. Good. We are all set. Okay. Now, it's not floral per se. It's not sweet per se. It's kind of a mix. It's kind of a mix. The next one is also kind of a mix. It's fruity, it's floral, it's like grape, methylanthranilate. Not much of this. It's a 5% dilution, and we're only going to need about 1.5 drops, maybe 2 drops. We'll do 2 drops. Why not? YOLO. Oh, that's perfect. 2 drops is just what we needed. Okay. Next up, let's do our Ethyl Laureate. Now, Ethyl Laureate, it's fruity, but it's a little bit more sweet. Maybe I should reclassify my Ethyl Laureate into the sweet notes. That's the trouble with perfumery. As you get more comfortable, more acquainted with your materials, you change your mind about where they belong. They just slowly shift. Next up, ethyl isobutyrate. Now this one I like because it's a bit rummy. It is a bit rummy, but it's strong. There's a nice fruity aspect to it. Yeah, only 1 drop of this. Okay. Interestingly, for this Angel's Share, there's no cognac oil, there's no rum extract, there's no whiskey lactone, there's none of those alcoholic notes in here that I see in other places. So interesting that we have an alcohol, inspired fragrance, but we don't have any literal alcohol notes. Next up, ethyl propionate. There's a trace amount of this, and I need to make another dilution. This is at 10%. You can smell these, the ethyl isobutyrate, ethyl propionate, 2-methyl isobutyrate. Like a lot of these materials, I've said it before, you're going to be okay to 1% dilution. You can smell them at 10%. You can smell that, oh boy, yeah, that's strong. This is strong. It's not even the smell necessarily, it's the activity I feel in my nose. You almost feel overpowered. And last up, Verdox. Verdox quite often will go into fragrances that are looking to build an apple note, an apple accord, and there's a good amount of Verdox in here. This is a 10% dilution. About 1.5% of the concentrate is in Verdox. Oh, looks like I need a little bit more. Come on. Come on. There we go. All right. Of course, I put the pipette away when I need to blend. So let's blend, let's dip, and we'll keep on trucking. Okay, here we go, floral and fruity. That was a big group. That was a big group. Okay, next up, let's do that. We're gonna do this. We are gonna add spicy notes with some extra aromatic notes. Now, let's start with the aromatic notes because there's very little amount. We have eucalyptol or 1,8-cineol. There's trace amounts of this. And I never know when I'm using eucalyptol, was this added as its own addition to the formula? Or is eucalyptol in the formula because eucalyptus oil was used? Don't know. Don't know. Next up, peppermint. Occasionally, I will see trace amounts of peppermint in a formula. This is a trace amount. This is a 1% dilution I'm using. 0.002% of the concentrate is in peppermint. That means about a drop, maybe a little bit more than 1 drop. Let's see. Yeah, just a touch more. So we've got a little bit of freshness. These two materials put together, they're fresh, they're fresh. What we're going to add on is cinnamon. Though technically in the spicy category, I can see how there's a, I paired these together because there is a like corresponding brightness, freshness, a little top line sizzle to both of these, or to all of these. Cinnamon leaf, ooh. I'm really getting the eugenol today in my cinnamon leaf. It's just one drop of cinnamon leaf, and then the rest is cinnamon bark. There's about 10 times as much cinnamon bark as there is cinnamon leaf. But the cinnamon bark is only 0.15% of the concentrate. Cinnamon bark. It's a lot like the cinnamon leaf, just a bit more woody. Okay, perfect. Perfect, perfect. Oh yeah. Mix. Mix, mix, mix. Wonderful. My friends, we are trucking along here. Let's see, aromatic and spicy, wonderful. Okay. Now next up we have the top notes. Here I have 4. There's a fair bit of orange oil, myrcene. We saved the Helional. We've now moved the Helional to the top because of the, the ozonic effect that it has. And then alpha terpineol or linalool. So let's start with our myrcene. Again, myrcene is found in a lot of natural materials. I don't know if this was a part of a natural that just couldn't be determined in the analysis, or if myrcene was its own separate addition to the formula. Myrcene to me is citrusy with hints of pine. It's nice. It's clean. It's bright. Next up, orange. Sweet orange. Love the color on this. Love the smell on this. Almost a full pipette. Let's see. Do we get close? Almost. We need about a full gram in here. And I like this orange because right off the bat, it just smells like a freshly peeled orange. And then over time, that oranginess goes away a little bit, and what is left over are those aldehydes, those long-lasting, citrusy, waxy aldehydes. Next up, let's add our Helional. I just picked up a Schiff base called Core Oranger. It's Helional and methylene. And that stuff will not dissolve. It is having a tough time dissolving. So that's a fun adventure. I've got it on my nuclear reactor hot plate right here. Seeing if it will. It's slowly dissolving, but boy, it's taken a while. Okay, last up, terpineol alpha. This stuff is really interesting. It's really interesting. It's a little woody. It's a little piney. It's a little floral. It has a airiness to it that is just interesting. It's just interesting. And there's enough in here. There's only so much in here where, again, it makes me think, was this a part of a natural ingredient? Some essential oil? Or was it its own line item? There's not very much. Of course, I forget the pipette. All right, we got our spices. No, wait, our top notes. These are our top notes. Okay. Now we've got a few more groups to do. The first, we're going to add our animalic notes right now. We have two, Muscenone and Castoreum. I'm going to use the Muscenone first. There's a plenty of Muscenone in this. There's almost a full gram. Over 1% of the concentrate is in Muscenone Delta. It's a fair bit. But as you are well aware, beautiful fragrances often need an element of dirt, dirtiness, nastiness, something that's off. And for some reason, it helps warm it up, tie the whole thing together. It gives it a sense of realism. Perhaps because the world that we live in is not clean. When we smell the people around us, we smell their bodies. When we smell flowers, you know, we smell a bit of the, I don't know, a bit of the decay that's occurring. Next up, Castoreum. Absolute. There's only about a drop of Castoreum. And I'm a fan of Castoreum. The smell of Castoreum. I love how it's leathery, smoky, fruity, like a little like raspberry. It's rich, it's bright, it's long lasting. It's just smells good. Okay. All set. So let's do our animalic. Okay. Four more ingredients, essentially. What I wanted to do at the end is specifically test and exercise my nose on two materials in particular, Cashmeran and Ambroxan. Now, Cashmeran, you could put in the musk section, but it's more of a mid note to a top note. It's strong, it projects. It feels a bit out of place with the rest of the smooth, soft, musky ambers that are in here. It's a little spicy, it's a little fruity, it's a little floral, but it's strong. And there is 4% of the concentrate is in Cashmeran. I want to smell what this smells like. We're almost done. I want to know what it smells like without the Cashmeran, and then with the Cashmeran, so I know what effect this has on the formula. I'm gonna have to make a new dilution. And Cashmeran, I think, is solid, so I'm gonna have to heat it up. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Okay, we're back. Cashmeran is melted. I'm gonna make a quick dilution here. Just gonna add 0.8 grams to this bottle because I've added 7.2 grams of ethanol. We'll have a fresh dilution. Boy, I forgot just how metallic Cashmeran is. I mean, it's got a nice zing on the edge of it. All right, so we got our Cashmeran. What I'm gonna do now is just add, I need another 3 grams of Cashmeran at 10%. So what I'll do is just put in 0.3 here, and then I'll add more ethanol until it gets to 3 grams. All right, we are good. Might have to order more Cashmeran. Running low. Okay, what did I need to do? Oh yeah, ethanol. Let's grab my ethanol pipette. We're gonna fill it up until we hit 3 more grams. All right, we're good. Glad we got our Cashmeran in here, and now we'll blend, blend, blend. And then we'll dip, and I think we'll have a nice example of what Cashmeran does to a formula. I'm gonna have to filter this. There's some solids in here. Don't know how solids got in there, but maybe my beaker was dirty. All right, Cashmeran, dip. Now, the next thing we're gonna do is I want to do a test to see what Ambroxan does to a formula. So the next up, we have Ambrox Super. Just over 3% of the concentrate is in Ambrox Super. Now, remember, when I smell Ambroxan at 10%, I have a hard time smelling it. When I smell it at 1%, I can smell it just fine. So I'm wondering, if I add it into this juice where it is about a 3%, 3% of the concentrate, will I be able to detect it? Will I be able to detect the effect that it has on the formula, the contribution that it makes to the formula? Because Ambroxan is this wonderful, ambery, golden, it's just wonderful. It is just wonderful. And I love how it smells when I can smell it. So let's get us to 2.7 grams here for this formula. Perfect. I'm going to give it a mix, a blend, and we'll do our dip. And then, my friends, we have two, technically three, but really two more materials. So let's dip our Ambroxan. Looking forward to smelling that one. Okay, next up, we're going to add Iso Super. I know, it's so simple, but Iso Super is 20%, over 20% of the concentrate. This has to do something, right? We're gonna see. I'm using Iso Super at 100%. It's one of the ways that I'm able to use all these 10% dilutions, yet still achieve, say, a 20% end, 20% concentration in the end batch. It's because I'm using neat Iso Super and Hedione at 50%. Come on, almost there. Perfect. Perfect. Now, Iso Super, I can smell neat. It's woody, dry, ambery. It has, to my nose, a similar warm golden effect to it. Oh, definitely need to mix this up. Look at that. Look at that. So cool. But gosh, I'm wondering where the solids are coming from. Maybe it came from the ethanol. The ethanol that I buy sometimes in the bottom of the jugs is, because I buy them in gallons, sometimes at the bottom of the jugs is, I don't know, maybe it's a liner from the cap that just, breaks off the cap and gets into the juice, or gets into the alcohol. I'm not quite sure. Oh, that was a big dip. All right, next up, last up, Hedione. Now, I say one material, two materials, because I've got Hedione HC and normal Hedione. I could probably just use curry small rather than mix these up, but yeah, whatever. Let's do our Hedione first. Now, these together is about 14% of the concentrate is in Hedione. I use Hedione at a 50% concentrate for two reasons. First reason, the math is relatively easy. It's not as easy as 10%, 1%, but I can manage 50%. I can do that in my head relatively easily. Second, why don't I use it neat? Well, in the ethanol that I use I will pre-treat it with BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene. Hydroxytoluene? Yeah, butylated hydroxytoluene. It is a antioxidant. And I use just a incy-weensy amount, just a little bit, to help the longevity of my materials. A while back, I had some of my Hedione start to go bad, and I didn't recognize it. I thought something else was going on. I thought it was my skin, maybe my diet was, I was starting to react funny. No, it was my Hedione. It's this really kind of like milk gone bad smell. And ever since I've started pre-treating my ethanol with BHT, I've had much less of a problem of materials going bad over the course of 6 months. Because I'm opening the bottles, exposing it to oxygen over and over again. It's not cooled in this office. It's probably 70 degrees right now, so I'm not keeping it at 55 degrees. So I think a little antioxidant goes a long way. All right, Hedione HC, a little bit more than we had of Hedione. 1.275 grams. And that's enough. That is enough. Okay. All right, let's give this a really good blend. The unfortunate part about Hedione, when I'm blending it, and thus I must assume that this is also the case for every other material that I blend, I can smell it as separate from the rest of the juice. It takes a couple hours. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe it takes it about an hour for the juice to, blend enough to where the Hedione starts to feel as if it's set in to the broader formula. So let's dip. Please tell me I dipped the Iso Super. Yes, I did. Good. Next up. Okay, so let's dip the Hedione. Good. And let's start to evaluate. Now, first up, we had our vanilla base, the Coumarin, Ethyl Maltol, Vanillin, Ethyl Vanillin, Isobutavan, which is a very nice vanilla-like material. Yeah, this is wonderful. This is vanilla, but I like the Coumarin and the contribution that it makes. It helps to lift and brighten the vanilla. So the vanilla is just not like, oh, that's vanilla. This is it's got a little personality to it. Now, next up, we added a bunch of musk. And the effect is barely noticeable. It's still sweet vanilla forward, but the musks, you can tell there's musks in there. Nothing too metallic, nothing too powdery. Nothing animalic. These are all clean musks, but it helps give it a little bit more volume at the bottom. Next up, Sandalwood and Veramoss. Interesting, the Veramoss is very delicate. It's noticeable, but it's very delicate. Not sure I can pick up the Sandalwood. I think I would need to separate out the Veramoss and Sandalwood and A/B test them. But still, this is good. The vanilla is getting a little bit more toned down as a more generic sweetness is starting to come forward. Next up, we had our balsamic notes. This includes a lot of Cinnamic Alcohol. We had a little bit of benzoin cyan, a little bit of myrrh, and a little bit of cistus. And the most noticeable thing, if you could even say that it's noticeable, is the Cinnamic Alcohol. I can't really pick up the cistus. I can't really pick up the benzoin. I want to. My brain wants to so bad to find it, but I can't, if I'm being honest. However, having just smelled the Cinnamic Alcohol, I can pick up the effect that the Cinnamic Alcohol is having. It's adding a broad, deep balsamic tone to the musks, the vanilla, the Veramoss. That's what it's adding there. Now, next up, we had a kind of a game changer. We added the Linalyl Acetate, Linalool, Linalyl Oxide, Ethyl Linalool. I'm just expecting fruity floral, metallic push on top of vanilla. Interested to smell this. And that's interesting. For as much linalyl acetate that we added, it's not entirely noticeable. It does add a little bit of freshness, like soapy metallic freshness, but it's delicate. It is delicate. That's interesting. Next up, we had a lot of floral materials, fruity materials like ethyl isobutyrate. We had our nerolidol, our methyl anthranilate, Verdox, ethyl propionate, Heliotropin. And here it's much more noticeable. Percentage-wise, though, there wasn't a lot in here. And yet we're adding on another layer of complexity, another layer of interest. And this does add a powdery floral on top. I think the combination in particular of methyl anthranilate, Heliotropin, give it a very nice, bright, fruity, powdery note. But I'm sure the ethyl isobutyrate helps with the projection. And the ethyl propionate, because those are just strong materials that really, really push. Next up, we added very small amounts of linalool oxide, not linalool oxide, of peppermint and eucalyptol. And then we added cinnamon leaf, cinnamon bark. Oh, interesting. I can smell the cinnamon. I want to smell the peppermint. My brain is telling me, yeah, Ryan, can't you smell that little hint of cool freshness behind the cinnamon? But I can smell the cinnamon. It's a very nice addition. It's very subtle. Again, it's like we start with this base and we start to add on little layers of complexity, little layers of nuance that just make it more interesting. And the cinnamon is a great addition. Absolutely fantastic addition. Next up, we have our top notes, the orange, the myrcene, terpineol alpha, and the Helional. Whoa, interesting. The Helional, the Helional effect is noticeable. That ozonic opening and addition of clarity is actually a little bit noticeable. And the orange is delicate. I can smell it, but it's just a hint. I only can pick it up because I'm looking for it. If I wasn't looking for it, I would just say, oh, it's a little bit brighter. It's a little bit more clear. It's a little bit brighter than the scent strip before. But because I know it's orange, my brain is able to go, oh, that brightness, that aspect that we just added, that's orange. I've got 5 more. We added our animalic notes, the Castoreum and the Muscenone. Now there was a fair bit of Muscenone in here, about 1% of the concentrate, and then just a splash of Castoreum. I'm probably not going to be able to smell the Castoreum, but I'm hoping I'll be able to smell the Muscenone. Yes, I can smell the Muscenone. And what I so enjoy about this process is that I know what I'm looking for. My brain knows it's there, and I can parse out strip A and strip B, and I can smell the difference. And my brain can start learning, oh, that's the effect that adding molecule X does to a formula, or at least, this is the contribution it can make. In this case, we still have vanilla musk as our base. It's sweet, it's rich. That cinnamon alcohol helps to, help to add a balsamic aspect to it. The Veramoss helped to add a smoothness, but just a little edgy mossiness to it. We add a little bit of florals, a little bit of fruits, some spices that were noticeable, a little bit of brightness in the citrus with the top notes. And now we've added a delicate animalic edge. And I mean delicate. But it's very nice. Now, next up, I'm hoping we get some heavy hitters. I'm hoping Cashmeran is noticeable. I'm hoping Ambroxan is noticeable. Let's see. Cashmeran. Hands down, noticeable. This is popping. Yeah, it's metallic, it's musky, it's fruity, it's ambery, it's floral. It's cutting through. This is cutting through. Okay, let me remind my nose. Before, subtle, it's clean, not really projecting. And then Cashmeran. Yeah. This Cashmeran adds a sharp edge to the dull blade that was the formula before. It cuts through right into my nose. That's wonderful. While I'm waiting for the last three, I'm going to take some juice here and just put it on my hand. I want to get this on skin. We'll do 3 drops. Okay. All right. So next up was Ambroxan, or Ambrox Super from Firmenich. It was 2.7% of the concentrate. Let's see if we can smell a difference. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. It adds an ambery aspect to the Cashmeran. That Cashmeran is still cutting, so now my reference point, the gravity of my focus is going to the edge of Cashmeran. And Ambroxan helps smooth, polish that sharp edge. It's not shiny, like it's not glinting off the light, but I'm getting a more refined edge now. It's just cutting through a little bit more cleanly, not as aggressively. Now let's go to the last two, the Iso E Super. Iso E Super. Again, 20% of the concentrate was Iso E Super. And I can smell the Iso E Super. I'm so thankful. This is adding a smooth, transparent, ambery, woody background. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm glad I can smell that. Last up, the Hedione. Let me reset my nose. Okay. Last up, Hedione. And finally, I'm at a point where I'm not just picking up the Hedione. I can smell the effect of Hedione. That I can definitely smell. It's adding it's floralizing it. It's adding some lift. Yeah, adding some nice jasmine, open lift to the fragrance. On a strip, this is good. This is very good. And this does remind me of Angel's Share. In my memory, Angel's Share was a bit more lactonic. I might be misremembering, but this is sweet. It is a little boozy. It's balanced. It's projecting off of this strip pretty well. It's very good. All right, let's smell the skin. Last bit. It's nice on the skin. It's a bit darker. The fruity notes like the ethyl isobutyrate, ethyl propionate, ethyl laureate, the ethyls seem to be a bit more pronounced on my skin. But this is wonderful. Metallic or animalic, Cashmeran. Yeah, now my nose is getting tired. I'm gonna have to come back to these. Friends, this is a great formula. This is a great formula. Is it Angel's Share? Remember, we're never gonna be able to make the fragrance. Something's gonna be different. GCMS analyses are hard enough, especially because there's variation in the output of the machine, you know, from sample to sample. It could be the same sample, you might get a slightly different output. And then trying to figure out what natural's going in there, boy, unless you have the formula from the perfumer and access to their materials, it's gonna smell a little bit different. So, that said, this is good stuff. This is very good stuff. Whip it up, let it mature, give it a try, and per usual, if you make any replacements, make a comment and let us know how it goes. Thanks for joining me.